All right, good morning everybody and welcome to this episode of Pit Stop. Today we are based in Cape Town, Strand. It's a lovely place, it's windy, it's cold or chilly, let me rather say chilly. In the Northern Cape we never get cold, it's just chilly. And at the back you will see a bit of Table Mountain. Unfortunately for the overcast, the guys that's not familiar with this area, I'm sorry bro. But today we've got a special guest. His name is Ron Anderson. He's all the way from the Middle East. He has been the president of Dubai for the CMA, Motorcycle Association. And we are really privileged. He just recently returned to South Africa and he's picking up his roots here again. And we are really so excited of having him here to share his story and his experiences of what it is being a biker. Just remember that at Pit Stop, this is a story by bikers and it's for bikers. And this is where we tell our stories of what it is and how it is to be a biker.
Thanks, Niels. Really nice to be able to come and share with you.
Thank you, Ron. Ron, I'm looking at your hair here, and I said to JP in the previous session that he's got a bit of a lack of the hair. I think it's because of all opening up the throttle so much, you know. But with you've got pretty much a lot of white hair. You know, the Bible says it's wisdom. Is that true, brother?
Well, I certainly hope so. Yeah, no, I'm very blessed. It was quite incredible, you know. Much younger than me, my father was actually bald. So I've really been blessed by God to have this mop of hair, and I'm really grateful for it, and we pray that this is a sign of wisdom.
Yeah. You see, JP, you're not the other one that's bald. Even Ron's dad was bald, you know. You see. Ron, you've been around the world. In our previous discussion, you mentioned that you've been to Iron Mountain in the States, and a big amount of your time that was spent in the Middle East in terms of working and sharing the gospel and being a biker. I want to start by asking, why biking? Why not motor cars and dragsters, but bikes?
Yeah. Well, I think I can truly say that it is in my DNA. It's quite weird. But although I started getting involved in motorcycling only in my early 20s, my father was involved in motorcycling in the early years of motorcycling here in Cape Town in the, I think, late 40s, early 50s. And unfortunately I lost him you know, when we were quite young, my father passed away, but he used to have a BMW, and my mother would tell us all these stories of them driving along in the BMW and going all over the place. And it's quite incredible that as I grew up, I just always had this real interest and passion in motorcycles. And it was just always there. When I was in high school, of course, all my friends had 50s and so forth. I didn't, but I can remember that I used to sneak away with some of the guys, and we used to borrow somebody's 50 and we used to bunk at school, you know.
Did you steal it?
No, we used to borrow a friend's bike and go and bunk off somewhere for an hour or two and so on, you know.
It's a friendly borrow.
Yeah, and so I think that for me, truly, I can say it is something that has always been in my DNA. I can remember growing up, and I stayed with my grandmother for some of my high school years. And in those years, the Hells Angels were a big, were sort of a very prominent group, and a motorcycle club. And I can remember standing in the street and watching all the guys go past. Those years it was all BMWs, Harleys and Triumphs, you know, and saying, man, I want to be part of something like that, you know. So yeah.
So at what stage you've seen Dad and you've listened to all these stories, and I think that is where everything, I think for most of us, starts off is we come home and we tell our stories about what we've experienced while we were driving on the bike. Like one example, the one kid asked me, Uncle, why are you on the motorcycle? I said, you know what, it's quite simple. It's a freedom. You know, when I go down the road and I experience all the elements and I use all my senses, and he didn't quite understand what I was saying, and I said, you know what, let me explain to you this way. When I get on my bike and I drive from point A to point B, and it's a countryside, and somewhere along the road I'll smell something that's dead. It's a terrible smell, but
Yeah.
it's a moment and then it's gone, and then it's fresh air. You
Yeah.
know, if you go with your mom and dad in a car to an holiday,
Right.
and it might like, be a little bit of a, you know, an accident like a fart or something there. It's not
Yeah.
a question of a few
No.
seconds. It's quite an extended period of time
Yes.
that you smell that.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's the difference for me. Experiencing everything, using all your senses.
Yes.
But there was a time in your life, probably, where you actually realized, you know what, maybe in your 20s, 30s, I don't know, but where you said, you know what, this is me. This is me. I like riding, and this is why I like riding. At what stage have you realized that making the choice of, yes, biking, this is for me. It's in my blood. It's my
Yeah.
murg in my been.
Yeah.
At what stage in your life?
Well, I think in my early 20s it was quite strange. I had just recently got married, and part of my wife's family were into motorcycling, and I just realized. I mean, I always had the desire to have a motorcycle, and that just was the catalyst to get me involved. And I said, right, I need to be part of this. I bought myself an old XL125 Honda,
Oh,
and strangely enough, that's where I started. I started with that XL125, and we used to have so much fun on that thing. We did mostly off-road
Yeah.
and so forth. I didn't at that stage do a lot of on-road and so forth,
Yeah.
but that's where it really started for me, and the bug bit.
yeah.
And from there on, I got involved, and I actually got involved in motocross.
Oh,
And I did
Oh.
motocross for a couple of years and so forth. And as I progressed, a friend of mine sponsored me, and I was sponsored on a Kawasaki 125, the old KX 125.
hey.
Which was a motorcycle that had the worst suspension ever at that time, but it was really peppy, and I had loads of fun. And I used to ride at Syringa Spa. I mean, I was never really fantastically good, but I really good. That's where I got involved, and it was really on off-road and on track. And I did a bit of riding at Wembley Stadium in Johannesburg.
Yo.
They used to have the hot rods and so forth.
Yeah.
And then to bring in extra people, they started building a motocross track for extra entertainment, and I rode there and so forth. So that's really kind of where I started off and started to get involved in the whole motorcycling thing. And,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
I once met this guy from the States. We did a motorcycle tours, we and Steve Thomas. We had a lot of people coming in and explore the roads, coastal, but they do it on bike. And I can't specifically remember his name, but he was a motocross champion, unbeaten at that stage. So he was, I think, in his early 70s.
Yes.
And he told me about all the flips, and you could see in the style of riding, you know, the moment when he's on the gravel, it's like there's something just, you know, it's just different. The
Yes.
style, the way he grips his handles, and the way
Right.
when he handles his bike, it's just
Yes.
phenomenal. And there's so much that you can learn from these people, and people like
Absolutely.
yourself, you know.
Yeah.
We think, you're an oldie, you know, you've got nothing to teach me,
Yeah.
I'm young, but actually there's more into this.
Yeah.
Now there's one thing I do want to ask you, and this is, I think all of us do remember this. When you buy your bike, the very first time that you fell on your bike, tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that. My cousin who I used to ride with, in fact, he's a cousin by marriage, actually.
Okay.
He today is actually the president of CMA in Croatia, Ivan Knežević. And he was a couple of years younger than me, and of course he used to go riding all over the place up in the hills, and he had a YZ. So the YZ actually a lot more capable out in the rough than my old XL125, which was quite cumbersome. And he just used to go jumping. I just used to follow, and he used to jump these little gaps in the thing. And I can remember, boy, following him and diving into one of these gullies and so forth, falling myself dizziness.
I can just see
Oh
this
my
picture.
word! I tell you. and many, many others since then.
Mine was I had this guy at the stage. I had this 250 it's a Kim Camco.
Yes.
And I'm quite used to driving, and then you have these areas where you have the ditches that they line it out with some concrete.
Yes.
And I didn't focus, and as it turned out, in this little ditch there was a little bit of gravel. That's like soft sand. Yes. And I remember I was going in, I said, you know what, I need to lean into this.
Yes.
And as I leaned into it, instead of keeping it set, I advanced a little bit, and next moment I just go, whee! But that is just, just one of the moments that you never forget. You stand up and you look back and you see, what the hell just happened? I mean, and then you walk back and see, but this is a stupid mistake, but hey, it happens.
At that stage, I could say it's probably where your enthusiasm exceeds your ability. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, your kop word groter as jou rus. Ron, okay, so now looking at the styles and the way the South Africans are riding, for you being outside in the Middle East, how is the style of riding in the Middle East different than what we have in South Africa?
Well, I think that when I first got there, the interesting thing with me is that for many years in between that, my motocross, and when I went to the Middle East, of course I had been married and so forth, and I couldn't afford, as a married man with children, I couldn't afford to keep on a bike. And so what happened is I only really got involved when I went to the Middle East, and it was, motorcycling there was kind of still in its infancy, and this was around about 2003, 2004.
Sure.
And whereas in South Africa here, sports biking is probably the most prominent and, form of biking here. We got a good mix and we've got a lot of adventure. But when I got to the Middle East, most of the folk there were into the cruisers, into the Harley, that kind of whole Harley lifestyle and so forth. That was pretty much what most of the guys were doing. And it's a place with a variety of different people from all over the world. You can have 30, 40 different nationalities.
Yeah.
And of course you've got a lot of South Africans, a lot of English riders and so forth there, and you will find they tend more to be the sports bike riders. But they were a smaller, in number, and the majority of them were really, I think, was the guys into their Harleys and cruisers. Yeah. Now, the other thing about the UAE is it's actually a very small country.
Oh yeah.
So you're kind of very limited in your rides. If you went on a 350 or 400 kilometer ride, that was really a really long ride. But the average ride on a breakfast run was probably about 150, 200 kilometers. And very minimum. Sure. Yes, and only certain routes, so you would kind of ply the same old routes over time, unless you went across the border into one of the other countries. So but I think it was a case of you used what was available and enjoyed what was available to you.
It must have been very hot though. I mean, it's in the middle of the desert. I complain getting down from the Kimberley towards the Cape Town and go through the Karoo and Antam. It really does get in the Kalahari, it's really hot, but that's a different kind of hot that we have.
Yes. Well, the problem there is that you have about 6 months of summer. And during that 6 months, your temperatures can range anywhere from 40 degrees up to 48, sometimes 50, but averaging about 45. Now, that in itself is not the issue, but the fact that you almost have 100% humidity. So you would find that, for example, at 12 o'clock at night, you'd have still 38 degrees, but your humidity would be 90%. So what we would do is we would meet very early in the morning during summer when we rode, like 5:30 in the morning, to get to our venue early so that we can be home by 11 o'clock. Because obviously it's really hot, and of course you get dehydrated. So if you're on a longer ride, you're going to have to stop more often and take water and so forth.
That's one thing that you never think about.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you were caught up in a sandstorm? I believe sandstorms there can quite be intimidating and big. And
Yes. No, I've never been caught in a really big sandstorm of any sort of size. But what we did regularly ride in, we would ride in mild sandstorms.
okay.
You know, where we
Yeah.
would leave in the morning with our kit all nice and clean, and we'd get back and we'd be absolutely white like ghosts from all the sand
Yeah.
and the dust and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But we actually learned to ride, and some of those winds can be quite strong.
Yes.
So, you know, we would learn to compensate, you know, be
Compensate.
leaning into the
Yeah.
wind all the time. But it wasn't all the time,
Yeah.
but at certain times of the year you would have that, yes.
And you're talking about that leaning into the wind. There was this stage when I was driving the KLR 650.
Yes.
It was a 98. So I was going all the way from Kathu area going to Uppington to the study.
Yes.
And then you get that long flat stretch where the wind is quite intimidating. It's
Yes.
really strong. So you have to lean it. But then you have pockets
Yes.
where there's nothing
Yeah.
for some reason.
That's
and I
right.
can recall the very first time it happened to me, I had such a big fright I had to stop, because
Yeah.
the next moment you're paddling it, the
Yes.
next moment
Yeah,
you go,
exactly.
you're there.
Yeah.
And then it pushes you back. It's almost like lifting you
Yes.
to where you used to be, and that
Yeah.
that was quite a big scare
Yes.
for me. You know,
Yes.
it was like, okay, now I need to stop, because what happened, and just sit down and reflect. You know,
Yes.
wow, this could have gone really wrong.
Yeah.
Now,
If I might just tell you, the interesting thing there, that your riding season would actually start in the autumn. So from October, November, temperatures begin to drop, and it starts. The humidity starts to drop, and it gets, and that
Yeah.
actually lasts also for a couple of months. That becomes your actual riding season. So, like everywhere else,
Yeah.
winter isn't normally a riding season,
Yeah.
but in the UAE, when it cooled down, and for your winter months, that becomes the time when actually everybody's
Yeah.
out and your riding season starts.
You mentioned about the evenings when it gets so hot, and you have a 38 with the humidity of 88, 99. I've experienced similar things in the east, in Phuket, in Bangkok, and those areas.
Yes.
And we used to go out at about. There was a big group. I only found about it out. I found out about it quite late. Is they go out between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And that is the ultimate time. I actually picked it up while I was walking, because
Yes.
I couldn't sleep. It's hot, and
Yes.
my sleeping pattern was disturbed. So I was walking. I saw all these children, and actually it was children on 125s. You know,
Yes.
it was, and they were doing
Yes.
long distances. They would ask the children, "Okay, so where are you coming from?" And they would say, "I'm coming from Bangkok. We're
Yes.
going through to Hua Hin, and we're going to spend the weekend there."
Yes.
But why this time? It's you know what? The roads are hectic during the day, limits, and,
Right.
and it made me think,
Yes.
the way that we ride in South Africa, I would never ride at night in South Africa.
No.
It's my personal choice, just because of the animals, you know,
Right.
the kudus and
Right.
elans and stuff. Maybe in the bigger places you could do that, but going on a long road,
Yeah.
it's not advisable,
No.
especially in the Northern Cape.
And in the Middle East, you know, there are a lot of problems with traffic. People drive crazy there. And so really leaving early in the mornings, generally, whenever you're riding, was always a good thing, because the roads are open. That's that way. It's very similar type of thing. Leaving very early in the mornings,
Yeah,
because of the weather and so forth, and because you've got the road open. And of course, everybody wants to get on the road when it's open so they can tank it, right?
Dry beginning neck.
Exactly. So
Twisted.
you don't want traffic at those times. You want to be able to crank it. You know?
There's this one guy's name is Bill. He was also from the States. If I'm not mistaken myself, he's from Texas. And he was just this funny chap. And we went up, I think it's Monticello, you know, with all these twisties.
Yes.
So we took it moderately and go into the twist, lean into it. And he just came back, he said, "No, we did it too slow." I was like, "What are you talking about? We're doing too slow." He said, "No, he's going to go back." I said, "But let me come with." No, man, that man just, you know, he just opened up. He said,
Yes.
that is his feed. That is his food, you know,
Yes.
going into the twisties. And it was, I don't know, he was just nailing it. It was like,
Yeah.
and next moment he's gone. And I was doing my best there, you know, I was like, I'd never caught up with that guy.
Yeah.
But he was, you know, but when he comes to the water, when he goes through Baviaanspoort, you've got that little stretch of water at the bottom.
Yes.
Then he would say, "You know what, this is not my cup of tea, you know." It's like, "Oh, no, man, it's easy. Pick up your legs and you go."
Yeah.
It's like, he couldn't understand that.
Yes.
And the one guy, he said to me, when they came in, they had the BMWs, the 1200s.
Yes.
He wanted to do the Bavians with his wife at the back.
Yes.
I said to the guy, you know what, I don't know. He said, no, I can ride. I've been riding for many years. And he did it. I was astounded
Yes.
when he got through with his wife in the back. It's like a unit, you know. It's unity and a community when you go off. Looking at the styles, obviously
Yes.
they've done it for many years.
Yes.
That brings me to the point where we're riding in groups and we're riding for a specific cause and we're going into one direction.
Yes.
And I believe at CMA there's one specific reason why we ride, and that is to evangelize and to provide
Yes.
support and to help those people that are lost spiritually but also
Right.
physically, you know.
Right.
In your riding, how did you apply your Christian of building the kingdom of God within the areas that you are? I mean, looking at your UAE, I mean,
Yeah.
that must have been very difficult because it's a closed country.
Yes, it is.
So how did you manage to use your motorcycle, your riding skills, and the person that you asked to build or enhance the kingdom of God? I
Right.
think that's a
Yeah.
big question everybody asks.
Yeah, well, obviously there you cannot evangelize. It's against the law to evangelize openly.
Yeah.
It was a lot freer than many of the other Middle Eastern countries in that we were able to have church, we could have home groups, and we could do things like that. One of the things, strangely enough, that you were not supposed to do is wear any symbol with a cross. And yet, strangely enough, what we did is we always rode with our colors.
Yeah.
So we weren't a very, very big group. But what we used to do is we believed that by building relationships. So we didn't just want to be a group of Christians out on our rides every Friday, because their Friday is Sunday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Friday and Saturday is your weekend. So Fridays would be the breakfast runs.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is we didn't want to be just another bunch of Christians riding together. And so what we did is we would invite other bikers to come and join us and organize rides and so forth. And the one guy who actually, a couple, Johan Claessens, and who helped me to actually set up the CMA there, because he had a lot of experience. He used to organize once a year a ride which was our signature ride.
Okay.
And what we would do is we would invite secular bikers to come and join us.
Wow.
And we felt that the best way to evangelize and to reach them was by building relationships with these other
Yes.
bikers. And so whenever we had rides on our breakfast runs, or whether it was our signature ride, we would actually invite them along with us. We would pray before
Yeah.
we rode, and during the, over the 3-day tour that we had on our signature ride and so forth. So what we did is we basically lived out our relationship
Yeah.
with God and so forth,
Yeah, I think it's the small things. I like what you're saying now, because it's the small things. It's not always about preaching.
No.
You actually preach, but by the way that you live and the way that you do the things.
Yes.
That is a fundamental thing. By sitting in a restaurant, just taking your hands quickly to
Yeah.
say a quick prayer. Thank you, Lord. Bless this food in the hands. Amen. That really plays a big role
Yes.
into what people see, and
Right.
specifically in the East. And I think you would relate to that, is that people observe, they look. They observe and evaluate you before they start talking to you. So what you do, the way you sit, the way you approach the person, the way you
Yes.
greet him,
Yes.
that is fundamental to them in the Middle East. In South
Yes.
Africa, it's not as much. We
No.
quickly look and, yes, bro, kap op die skouer en
Yes.
dan gaan ons. But there, for them, what you do
Yes.
is actually fundamental.
Yeah.
And who you associate with. And I think
Yes.
that is very important, is about your association.
Yes.
With the young guys coming in, that is in between, I don't know what to do and how to do it, and I don't know where I fit into the whole community of being biking. What would you say to the young guys coming into? How could they use their skills or their way of riding or their decision making when they use a motorcycle when it comes to building the kingdom of God?
Well, I think that for young people, I think if you are involved in motorcycling, if I haven't been part of any group and so forth, I think it's a good idea to seek out, a group of Christian brothers and so forth that you can ride with. I think that there are various ways that we can reach out to people. You know that within the ministry, the bikers ministry, there's a lot of aid that is given to children for the toy runs and things like that, and various other activities, which are regular activities during the course of the year. And I think that for those young Christian motorcyclists that haven't been involved, I think it's a good thing for them to join up, to get to find, have you got a Christian chapter?
Yeah.
There are many chapters of CMA all over the country, is to slot in and to become part of that ministry.
Yeah.
It's already an established ministry.
It's already there, yeah.
And I think that the best way to get involved is then to join up with a chapter and get involved with that chapter and its activities.
Yeah.
Because I think the advantage of doing that is that CMA have had many, many years of building relationships with many of the motorcycle clubs.
Yeah.
And I think there is already, a foundation laid where you can come in and you can play your part. And I think that you learn a lot, about ministry. You get a foundation, I think, when you join CMA, you get a foundation to a spiritual foundation.
Yeah.
When you go through things like your Growing in Grace course,
Yeah.
which equips you to be a better testimony for Christ, and to be able to evangelize and share your testimony. And I think that's really important,
Yeah.
So for me, that would be the way I would suggest that you get involved.
I want to add to this, Ron, because it's very important what you're saying now. It's getting involved with the community. I think about being a Christian and being a follower of Christ is all about communion. It's getting together and share the gospel.
Yes.
But it's not to say that I'm in a specific riding group or a club that I need to resign and then join this CMA and become part of it, because we're not a club.
Yeah.
We are a ministry.
That's
we are
correct.
actually there to support and
That's
to build. But you can still stay within your community, still stay within your club, and still join the rides that we have.
Yes.
And join the group sessions
Yes.
that the CMA has
That's
offered
right.
to everybody. And it doesn't matter for who and where you're riding from, as long as you
Yeah.
are there to share the gospel and to learn.
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer that God will call you for the place where you are. And
True.
I am one of those guys that would say, you know what, maybe you are where you are because that is where God placed you to make a difference.
Yes.
And moving to the CMA might jeopardize that calling. So it's always a good thing to be part and then tap in,
Yeah.
in. Hey, Ron, what's happening? Or JP or George, I need help with this.
Yes.
In this, and you can make the difference where I can't make it as
Right.
a CMA.
Well, I can tell you that we have that kind of a setup. So we have a local home cell.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have people that join our home cell that have got nothing to do with CMA, but they're fellow bikers.
Yeah.
Also, out of that, what comes is just because we have this group of bikers together, the guys are always fiddling around on motorcycles together, always getting together, helping one another and so forth.
Yeah.
And so, and in that process, we get to meet unsaved bikers.
True.
The guy down the road comes and walks in and says, hey, what are you guys doing here, And it gives us an opportunity, hey, hi, how are you, and so on.
Yeah.
So wherever you were involved actually in motorcycling, somewhere along the line, you get involved with other bikers and so forth. And these all create opportunities for you to be able to share the gospel,
And I'm still a strong believer in terms of Jesus creates those opportunities for us.
Yes.
And the Spirit leads us into that. And God is always watching over us.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you are, who you are. You're part of God's kingdom and He's there to watch over you.
Right.
Ron, it's been really an honor to have you on the show, and
Fantastic.
It would be very nice if we could meet up at some stage again.
Sure.
For the people there listening and watching this, you can get all of Ron by contacting us at Pitstop, and we will forward the details through to you. But he's in Cape Town. He's a loving guy. He's an open guy. He likes to share. He likes to ride. And that's part of him. And always remember that being a biker is not something different. It's not a different kind of person. It's ordinary people that does the extraordinary thing. Only difference between the biker And the guy that's not a biker, we like to ride.
Yes, that's right. Thanks so much, Niels.
Thank
It
you, my
was
brother.
really good.
It was time that I was standing there, down there. It's a very familiar picture that was taken down that side of the beach, looking on Table Mountain. It's always beautiful to stand here. The guys are really blessed living here.